welcome to another day of 31 Days of Horror. I'm your host, Stephen Bloodworth, filmmaker and indie film critic. Thank you so much for coming by. In the early 2000s, it seemed that horror filmmakers and the genre itself was coming to a halt. For a while, it seemed that all the horror genre was going to be were nothing but remakes. But then in 2005, there came an interesting new take on horror with Cry Wolf. Cry Wolf is in no shape or form a classic horror film, but it is very underrated and deserves a little more respect than what it gets. Directed by Jeff Waldo, the film starts off with a guy named Owen who is a transfer student and is now attending a prestigious remote boarding school. Owen is immediately befriended by a girl named Dodger, and she invites Owen to join him and her friends to play a game at night called Cry Wolf. It's essentially a lying game to determine who will admit to whatever someone has accused them of doing. Around the same time, a girl was murdered a few miles away from the school, and it was reported that her body was dragged through the woods by a wolf. Owen and his friends then decide to start a new game, but instead of it being just for them, they decide to get the whole school in on it. So Owen and Dodger essentially create the villain, who is known as the Wolf, dress him up in the ski mask and the camouflage jacket, wielding a hunting knife, and allegedly going after students at the boarding school. IMs start flooding out throughout the school, and very quickly this joke turns into not so much a laughing matter. Owen and his friends begin receiving messages from the one called the Wolf, and it just leads into a fight between these friends and determine who is the one screwing around with everyone. To review Cry Wolf in its entirety, it's pretty difficult to do so without giving away any spoilers, so for the sake of this film being very underrated, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I will invite you to check the film out for yourselves. Cry Wolf is definitely an extremely overlooked and underrated film from the early 2000s. Is it a masterpiece? Absolutely not, but after all, it does have some good thrills. And it also showed that in the early 2000s, in the dawn of all these remakes and prequels, there was still hope for original horror films.